Well, Nick, great to be with you. Thank you for making your way down.
Thanks for having me.
How is the business, for starters?
The business. So at the moment, we're in a situation where we've got a few centres in Perth and a few in Melbourne and one in Brisbane. And I'm personally very busy running around trying to calm and de-stress people through flotation tanks. So really, yeah, my mission, and it has been for, I'd say, almost the last 9 years, is how can I help wake people up through flotation tanks? And I know a lot of people just go, well, it's just a tank and you go lie in there in some water and, a bit of silence. And, for the people that don't really understand what a flotation tank is, it's filled full of Epsom salts, magnesium Epsom salts. You're deprived of your senses. The water's heated to the skin temperature. Air's heated to your skin temperature. So the purpose of it is to lose your external senses and heighten your internal senses. So within your brain, there's a thing called interception, and allows your breath and your heartbeat to become a lot more present, and people naturally get into a deep meditation state.
Beautiful. Yeah, I remember, when did you open the first centre? Was it 2010, 2011?
Oh, it would have been early 2013, so 6 years ago, but I was...
Right.
Took
well,
me
you were
three,
talking
took
about
me
it, weren't
3
you?
years
Yeah.
to get it open through health department. Never walk into the health
Right.
department, WA.
Okay.
So that's a lesson for anyone. Don't
Yeah,
do
because
that.
I remember we were doing a lot of sessions together at that time, and you were doing sessions up in the hills or something like that and having profound experiences, and you started talking about opening up a float centre. So that was early 2013 where you opened the first one.
Yep.
And then it's been like an extra one, an added one every year since then, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Going back on the math, it looks to be about that. So I'm definitely at the stage where I went in with a really strong purpose. So for me, I was a big alpha male in, not sure whether most of the audience is, but within Perth and around all the scene of where alpha males and those kind of people hang out. And so, I was really driven by just trying to be the best womanizer or trying to be the best business dude and just cool and whatever, and just identifying with this picture that I believed that society said was cool. And so I came across a float tank in San Diego in the US when I was working and living there for a little bit at the time, back in 2008. And at that time, I just had a float, didn't think much of it. The guy that took me down there, he was operating on another level. So for me, he seemed like an enlightened guy. Now, going down the track, he's probably not. But, he just was operating on a different level of consciousness, or just something about him that propelled me to him. Went and had a float with him. Didn't think much of it. The next day, I was just creative, writing all these things down. I was partying, should have been hungover in the hotel room, but was just inspired and creative, which was a rare thing for me at that stage of my life. So I thought there's a bit more to it. And then at that stage, I was living in Switzerland, then began floating there. Then when I came back to Perth, I was like, where do I find a float tank? And it was like, there's nothing. And then I found of a lady that had one in the house in the back of her, like she had a bit of a day spa, lovely lady, Glenda, up in Gooseberry Hills. And she had a tank there. And then, just kept going there. And for me, it was just a huge touch point or connection to the intuition, to the feeling sides of things, because I really didn't know anything about that. And, so much so, which, I had those experiences in the float tank. It began to, allow me to connect a little bit more to my heart, to seeing life from a 40,000-foot viewpoint. At the time, I had a breakup with a partner, and I was able to profoundly, rather than us ending badly, which it could have quite easily done, to see the higher perspective of how we came into each other's lives. And all of this came through just me mindfully just doing a few little practices that I read in a book, and then did that in the tank, and that allowed me to just go deeper. And then from there, I'd never understood the purpose of meditation or yoga. So then, I reached out to a meditation teacher that I'd heard of, and then began to do work with her. And then she eventually led me to you. Or it might have been then I worked with another lady, and then she led me to you again. So there was two people leading me to you. And then began working with you for about 5 years, and through that process just allowed me to kind of break down the armor, I think as you like to say it as well. I remember you saying is just breaking down that armor through the yoga and a lot of really talking really we did back in the day. And that helped me, balance a little bit out, into that feminine. And, I come from a background of just a violent, win at all costs upbringing. So that was you don't do well, I'll belt you, you do this, So it was a very hard kind of upbringing that made me extremely hard. And that's why when I used to play football, I was fine being the alpha of the alphas, like off the field more mostly. So, I'm so glad that, there's all in the media at the moment, there's all this bad stuff going on with a lot of these football players. I'm like, thank God I'm out of that.
Right. Yeah.
And it looks terrible. And just like now I just squeeze, I just cringe at it. I was like, can't believe I was, involved in that kind of thing, not to probably as bad as what's probably in the media, but just still the way that, we treated women to, going, just really just not feeling, understanding the frequency of the other person that you're kind of relating with. And it's just like, yep, cool, you're, part of my project, tick the bucket list, I'm moving on.
It's pretty crazy in that macho scene as well. Like shitty behavior is kind of commended. You get a pat on the back for being a lad. That's ladsy. The more of a dickhead you are, the more kind of props you get, which is just bizarre, huh? It's very unique to our culture, I think, the immensity of how far as lads we culturally take it. And in many places it just wouldn't be acceptable what we do here, and we get a pat on the back for it,
Yeah, especially in the football scenes. I think the whole, like, the shake-up through the AFL with the Ben Cousins thing and all of that, I think that was like a good little point there to actually get rid of the old. That's probably been there for who knows how long. I don't actually know how long back that culture of the Australian football is.
Overdosing, Ben Cousins. I mean, does it seem... I'm not really up with it anymore. Does it seem like it's gotten better? Or?
It definitely... I'm not up with football. I'm not into it that much. I just did it, to be brutally honest. I only played for the women. And, that was the desire nature at that point. That was the glamour because I came to Perth when I was 16 and I went to school and I saw all these girls like the guys that played footy. And I was like, well, I'll play that. So, and I just naturally I was good at sports. So I just went into that and did that. And went down that direction and didn't really have much of a goal besides, Claremont was a local side in Perth, and just decided, was playing there. And for me, I'm just happy to play there and have a lot of fun. These guys have a huge amount of fun. And I was like, well, this is where life is. I was a really good cricketer in basketball, but they were quite boring off the field. So like past those sports I was so passionate about for football, just for that reason, for partying, because there was something within me through a teenager that was just saw this, video hits or ABC that was like, oh, you just got to live like a rock star. So anything that's not allowing me to live like a rock star, I'm not that interested in. And even when I was playing football, I had all these opportunities for AFL. And at that stage, I was actually making a lot of money in the porn industry. So I had a few businesses running out of Perth that was actually just promoting thousands of these adult websites. Sounds more glamorous than what it is, but it was just really I'd worked out how to rank websites in Google and Yahoo and MSN back then in the early 2000s. And yeah, we had a really flourishing business. So at that time I was making crazy money for a 22-year-old, crazy money. And then, so I had every addiction in the book while still playing football and getting these offers and then meeting like this guy, Kevin Sheedy, who was like a really famous footballer at the time, or famous coach, still probably is well known. And yeah, I was off my head when I met him. And he's like, yeah, we're going to pick you up next week. And I was like, oh, I hadn't done any of the paperwork. And that was...
The footy team will pick you up.
Yeah. And they realised that, I'm go down in folklore within the kind of the local competition for me to go, who's that idiot that had all these clubs after him? And Guy McKenna, one of these ex-Eagles greats, just went up to me going, what are you doing, you dickhead? And just at that time, it just... For me, it was like, or whatever, I'm not taking a pay cut and getting told what to do. So for me, yeah, that was kind of, I played a little bit after that, but that was just fading away because I kind of blew
Right.
blew that little world up, and I just went, well, I'll just travel and keep doing this adult lifestyle thing. And
so you were working in the porn industry, making millions. You got the offer from the AFL. It wasn't as much as what you were making, so you were like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that was the sequence of how that went down.
Yeah. That's how that went down. So it was more so because at the time I lived with a couple of guys who were one guy was playing for the Eagles and his brother then played at Melbourne. And yeah, I was kind of intertwined into that. I played with a lot of guys, that were playing when they weren't playing or that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I have more fun. So it wasn't, the glamour wasn't there for me. I'd never grown up caring. I guess that's the best way to look at it. And, I'd never had that desire. And then for me to go back, it was almost like I was pissing on every one of my friends' dreams. Right. And then there was a bit of a, still Nicky, having a good time. However, it was, you could see that you've just crapped on their dreams, completely, So from that perspective, that was a whack. But looking at the culture, I was the worst of the worst, up there, in terms of leading, the bad behavior off the field. So then when we talk about now, I know a few guys. I don't really follow football at all because, once again, it wasn't my passion growing up. So then I'm just not interested, but I'm tied to a few people around the flotation tanks that use it for performance, and they're lovely human beings. They're all just brilliant people, and I'm just like, wow. I don't, that type of personality wasn't there where they're very feminine.
How incredible! What a great platform. I mean, it seems like you're getting quite a few athletes and macho type men. I remember you talking of a lot of minors coming in, and they're all butched up and your typical alpha male, like what you're describing, kind of you were, but in a different context. And then coming in, and you would gradually witness them softening and becoming more joyful and so forth. Can you speak to that a little bit about how you've witnessed like the typical Australian alpha male macho man softening into a much more balanced man?
Yeah, great examples of just, I would have my office at the back of the float center. I would see these guys coming in, and in their high vistas or whatever you call it, the orange colors or yellow colors, coming off the plane, and then they'd be floating, and then you'd be like, how was that? Good, mate. And that's about it. Cool. And then you'd, over time, let's say 5-6 months later, you notice the same guys, and then they're walking in with a yoga mat under their arm and a singlet and some Lululemon shorts, and you're like, oh, what's going on? You go, I'm into yoga now and this and that. And so I've always seen flotation tanks as a trampoline off to another channel. So really looking at where society is and where people are, where it's probably getting worse and worse with technology and screens and that constant addiction to just needing to do something and being busy, and the disease of being busy really is where flotation tanks come in, where someone can just simply lie down, lay back, and then it's just going to align their hemispheres of their brain. It's going to get them into the theta frequency, get them into a little bit more young and a youthful version of themselves, and they may begin to question themselves if they continue down that line. If they just have one float or two floats, it would just be, it was nice and relaxing. That's kind of it, really. But
or even those first couple of experiences can be scary, can't they? Challenging. If like one isn't prepared, if one hasn't ever had stillness and absolute quietness, and like maybe they're not prepared for it and they're facing all their thoughts, it could potentially be a challenging, can't it?
Yeah, very much so. There's no qualms about it. Like that at some point, a lot of people will deal with an emotion. We're just starting to implement some basic breathing techniques just to allow people just to be present through it, which minimizes a lot of that. Oh, I'm doing nothing. I'm floating around. It's like I'm bored. Or this is that email is just that. How could she do this to me, or this or that? And then just in flames. And then where am I at in my life, and whatever goes on. But it's definitely challenging, and we say that that's okay if you've got that experience. And now we're trying to give people a little bit more information rather than we were just the cool float dudes that just, hey, come in, float, cool, have a good one. If you didn't like it, whatever, we'll see it sometime soon. But now we're doing a little bit more in terms of just providing people a little bit more information. If we can tell, you can generally tell if someone's had one of those experiences to then, work with them. But we're doing a little bit more, pre-float and post-float conversation around just being present, experiencing that stillness to, we have a little tree of life up on the wall now where the sun is the consciousness. You've got the clouds with your thoughts and that, let's get you out of the thoughts and into the sun, and if they're a little bit deeper, then they go down to the tree, and the tree is the I, person identified to the person. And then the leaves are all the habits and behaviors that make up that person, then down through to the trunk, to if they get even deeper to the body, to the mind, the body, emotions and mind, and then identifying of which part of that they're identified to with. And if they go through that, then to the I am and to the true self, or whatever you want to call it. So
Beautiful.
But most will not get down there, but we just stick with the conversation up the clouds. But we're just doing a little bit more guidance, and we're just seeing phenomenal results.
That's great.
In going down that way. We never wanted to be the guide and tell people what to do, but in a way it looks like that needs to be the case for a lot of people to have that transformation, so then they can trampoline off to whatever it is that they want to do, Reiki, yoga, whatever it
Marvelous.
may be.
I mean, even just the simple advice of watch your thoughts, watch them come, watch them go, persist, breathe deep. Because eventually, like, even if it's really uncomfortable for people, just can't switch off the mind, just can't relax. Even that is really powerful in training the mind to be more present. It's still going to be incredibly beneficial on the body on so many levels. But then there's this mystical process when you're enduring the discomfort, when you're agitated and can't stop thinking, and you just endure it and watch it and breathe through it. This process in yoga called tapasya, in which eventually it will yield into a very blissful release. So to have that like hour and a half or whatever in the float tank is an awesome opportunity to work with the mind like that, and just simply watch, and knowing that if you are thinking like crazy, that's normal. That's fine. Like, I think a lot of people beat themselves up. They invest this money, this time in a float. Like shitty float. I just couldn't stop thinking. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to think. And it still is a powerful time, even if it, like what I hear from some people in the yoga context, in the floating, whatever, in a kind of mystical, meditative context where maybe they've had a beautiful experience, they've melted into meditation, they've felt a peak experience of I am, and then the next time it's shit, and they feel like, fuck, like, oh. And that's pretty common as well. And I think, like, it's not linear. There's plateaus and there's a step back every now and then. We can't really recreate a past experience, even if it was beautiful. But even when it is like a step back or a shittier experience the next time, it always builds up into this kind of toning of the mind, this recalibrating of the mind, that it deepens like a reference point of who we truly are, which, like you touched upon, is so important right now as technology evolves quicker than we can even keep up with. Even people in the business, like in the IT business, in the kind of Google business, developing technologies and writing code, are admitting like it is evolving quicker than they can keep up with. And they're the ones doing it. So it's taking on its own momentum, especially when AI comes into play, which it is very quickly. It's so important for us to unplug like deeply, like none of this crappy white light, blue light, the noise, the EMFs galore, just to be in the womb, the darkness. I mean, it's powerful. So it's no wonder why they're popping up left, right, and center. I mean, in my eyes, you were a real pioneer of bringing it into Perth and Australia, and all of a sudden there's so many. They're popping up like yoga studios now.
It's insane. Yeah, I think we were the second phase, as I like to say it. So there was the 80s and 90s. That was the first phase of floating that died away. Then it just became obscure in the back of day spas and people's homes, and that's just the way you could float. And that's the way I floated in the late 2000s, early 2010s onwards. And then, we opened up, and we were pretty much in Australia and set the blueprint up in that way. And I was like, oh, this kind of works. And then we got some national media in 2014, and then the race began. And then, was tied into that. So, started purposefully, like really wanting to help wake people up. And I got sucked into the whole like, oh, let's just grow the business because we can. And so the ego got involved and disconnected from actually the purpose of where we should have been going. So I'm definitely 100% aware and I wouldn't say the mess, but I'm in that crazy busyness that I've created for myself, with all these centers and all this demand, and just getting through the day. It's like, wow, like this is insane. Like in terms of, how much there is to do in different places. So it's been a lesson for myself in terms of just really staying true to kind of what the purpose is, and is this for ego, or is this actually going to continue the flow of kind of what you're doing? And it's been a good lesson for me to get sucked back into the old Nick of just like, let's go keep dominating. And just having that awareness of really why you got in doing what you do, rather than for other business or commercial reasons. So.
That's so beautiful how honest and vulnerable you are being with that conversation. A lot of people, especially in that old kind of alpha male energy that you were very deeply conditioned with until relatively recently, that's huge to be honest with that predicament and to be vulnerable with that on recording, like I think that's a big, I think that is actually really helpful for people and inspiring for people in getting honest when they've lost that or losing. They can witness that they're losing that connection to their original passion and that original vision for it. So that's cool. And once you can see it, you can make the changes to kind of readjust and come back to that vision, huh?
100%. And that's why it's, as I was talking about before, about the mind, working with people mindfully, like being aware of the mess that I've created in a way for myself, with all these centers. It looks cool on the outside, but within it's like it's lost a little bit of that essence, that lovely essence that we had. And, I've got an amazing culture and, can't beat the community that we have around our float centers. They're just amazing and awesome, and they're everyone's little go-to space to get back and calibrate themselves and then work with us or go off and do whatever they need to do. So from that point of view, it's it's really humbling, and the help that's around. But having that awareness, I think, has helped open some doors for like, okay, where's the next chapter here? Mm-hmm. How do we evolve? So that, things can be a little bit, less consuming for myself. And more importantly, growing, the importance of the flotation tank, because the flotation tank, I personally believe, pulls people out of the mud. We pull them up, get them a little bit muddy, out of the mud and then up the hill a little bit. And then there's the yogi master or the Reiki master or the, kinesiologist or whatever it is to take them down another path. Mm-hmm. That they want to go, hey, if they want to keep floating, that's cool. But, I'm not disillusioned that, the part to play that we take people from unawake to the aspirant, and then where the aspirant goes from there, I'm not sure. So that's where I see where we are in terms of, helping humanity, the flotation tank industry. So, and I'm part of the association at the moment, which is getting more sciencey, but doing mental health conferences. So we're getting some researchers down from the States who are doing clinical studies, like $11 million clinical studies on the long-term effects of anxiety and depression with floating, to do talks in the mental health conferences. We're doing a study with the police force at the moment, and those guys are broken, and ladies, with their anxiety and PTSD. It just consumed. If you could imagine that industry where you're just dealing with,
I often do imagine
pretty ugly things every day,
Yeah, I often do imagine the lives of like paramedics and police, and it would be full on, and people in emergency wards and so forth, dealing with the kind of nth degree of stress and turmoil, and being in that hours and hours a day, that being your prime kind of identity and that prime way of being in the world, if you don't have a mindfulness practice or a floating practice or something, a yoga practice to disidentify from that role and that way of being in the world, that's a lot of time. You'd have to be incredibly willful, strong, and robust to be able to do that with longevity without a mindfulness practice or psychotherapy or good quality psychiatry or something like that. So yeah, I can totally see floating as a great platform for that. I'd love to stay up to date with that research, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's we're a little bit down the road. So much so we got the commissioner in Melbourne coming in to oversee what's going on, because we've had these police officers go back to their GPs or their psychs, and they're like, "What is going on? We have not seen this kind of turn before." And it's like, "What's this floating thing?" And then for them going and speaking to work cover, and that could potentially change, because they've got a huge suicide problem in the police force at the moment. And if you asked me a couple of years ago, it's like, "Oh, you'd be working with the police." I'd be like, "Okay, that's not really aligned with where we're going." But from that point of view, seeing where it is, it's like seeing these people. You walk into a float tent, you're having a crappy day, and then you walk in, and then you see this guy just going, "Oh, you're Nick," or whatever, yeah, and big hug. And you're like, whoa, this big burly tough guy full of armor, and just first time I felt like myself in I don't know how long, and
that just gave me shivers. That's beautiful. Wow.
And that's where it's like, wow, this is really cool, where you can take someone that's hurting so much, and then they lay in a pod for an hour, and whether we give them a mindful practice or just let them float, doesn't matter either way. It's great for people with high anxiety or PTSD. And for that particular industry, it's really good. It's amazing for them, and it's just going down that line to try and change some of these industries. Because if you could imagine, like, a lot less anxious and stressed cops out there, how better they may be able to deal with certain situations that would make everyone else's lives a little bit better. I think that from that point of view, it could be a good little butterfly effect for a lot of communities around with calmer cops, or paramedics are a little bit more calmer in the situation, but you can't really help those situations that they see. They drive down a corner, flashback. Drive to that corner, flashback. Especially those ones that deal with the road stuff. They deal with the tougher situations. But yeah, that's where I see floating helping that particular industry, and there's lots of different areas that it can help people with. But the high anxiety, muscle tension, especially when we store, as all that anxiety and emotions, and history within your body. And when you get in the float tank, if you're getting lots of twitches, you're just kicking out that little bit of energy. So, when people come out and I twitched like 20 times, I was like, well, that's pretty good. How are you feeling? Great. It's like that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. Now, a lot of the listeners, and including myself, like, really seasoned with meditation and the shavasana after a long, thorough asana practice, breath practice is beautiful, but it's undeniable that there's a different kind of experience that happens in the float tank. And I can't quite describe what happens with that. I'm going to ask you in a moment to kind of try and describe what actually happens in that. Yes, it's meditation. Well, it can potentially open up the experience of meditation. Yes, you're getting that, like, just a huge amount of magnesium pumping through your body, which is good. Yes, it's like depriving the senses. I mean, that seems like enough, but I'd love to know a bit more of what happens during that process of when you first get in the float tank, and then over that duration, something beautiful happens. And then often, even if it's not beautiful during it, beautiful, like you shared with your first float, like the day after or whatever, you're in your hotel room and you just felt well-being that you hadn't felt before. Like, what's going on after and the day after? Like, often there's a delayed effect. What's the whole situation going on there?
Yeah. So I guess once you step out of the tank, biologically what's happened is your cortisol's reduced. So your stress within your body, you're less anxious, you're full of magnesium, so then you'll go home and sleep really well that night. And then we believe the combination of that with also, from a brainwave point of view, you've got to a theta frequency, which advanced meditators can get to quite easily. But for the person just walking down the road that's never done mindfulness or meditation, they can just lay back, and for a lot of them, they can just get into that theta frequency. Some of them, like a lot of kids up till 7, are in the theta frequency, that open learning frequency within the brain. So biologically, there are a couple of things happening there, but the biggest one is the central nervous system reset. So when you're in there floating, deprived of all the senses, all of a sudden the brain can just chill because it's not controlling the central nervous system that's just all day long taking in all these sights and sounds and stimulus that we're all taking on from all angles. And that allowing to have a reset puts people in the parasympathetic response, which is, the relaxation response. And then, so the combination of that, going home, having a really good night's sleep, just allows people to have that mental clarity. And we talk about AFL footballers, and we had Novak Djokovic floating with us through the Australian Open. Really spiritual, deep dude, actually. Looks like a crazy guy on the court and stuff, but a really nice guy. And what he said, and what these footballers do, where they float the night before their performance, is it just helps them be calmer and that mental clarity. And I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is the day after, or some people it's the 2 days after. Not everyone's always the day after. It's a strange phenomenon that some people, nothing happens until 2 days after. But that combination of that, just the dopamine, the endorphins, the cortisol reduced, the theta frequency, your brain at the theta frequency, your nervous system resetting, body full of magnesium, you sleep well, that combination just allows people to feel pretty good. And that post-float glow the day after, and that's really just the mental clarity, I would say, is the big piece of it. And that's why these footballers and athletes, like Steph Curry, one of the best NBA players in the world, like hit more three-pointers, got a record for three-pointers, and always hitting those shots because he's always making sure he floats before the games, and so that he's clear in the mind for those tough situations. And the New England Patriots, which won all these Super Bowls, they installed float tanks in their facilities 5 years ago, and they've won like 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls or something like that. And doing amazing plays in tough situations all the time, and they're like famous for that. And I believe that it's just helping them be a little bit clearer in the moment for that particular point in time. And there's a lot of research out there showing from a performance point of view, whether you want to look at it from athletics or to just being productive and getting stuff done in your own business or your own, venture or creative pursuit, that when stress is there, you're not going to be as productive. You're not going to be, there's a lot of physiological things happening with cortisol pumped through your body to not be in that best state to be clear and make the right decisions. So it's predominantly around that stress, I would say, which is a big thing, which is obviously the nervous system and allowing people to be clear and just be in the moment. That's probably the big thing. So you could go and have a float that sucked and walk out of there and go, I didn't like that at all, or that was too confronting. I didn't like being in that confined space. But if you stuck through that hour, for the most part, you're going to get that benefit the day after, and which is where the magic is. Yes, the experience can be deeply spiritual, can be deeply calming, just a beautiful switch off away from screens. But it's the day after that you get in a lot of the goodness. And we always try and remind people to do something productive or creative or something the next day.
Yeah, undeniably, it switches on a deeper flow or intelligence or zone, whatever word we want to give it, but it tends to unlock a deeper intelligence. I mean, what's the average amount of thoughts most of us think a day? Like 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And that fight or flight, sympathetic, just tension that's become the norm in our culture. On top of that, the technological just mayhem that we're in, that's beautiful. It's allowing us to do this, but it's also confusing our minds and our circuitry and our body if we're not keeping it in check and doing something such as a float or yoga or something like that. And it seems that it provides a really powerful platform to do everything that you just said, which then shines the light on how much we can utilize our mind in a way that most of us haven't been taught. Like the mind is literally limitless. And when we get back in the womb, so to speak, which is what the float tank feels like to me, this kind of womb of recreation, of reconnecting. Yeah, it's whichever way you look at it, like disconnecting to reconnect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly it. Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite to, we've never been so connected with our phones and our computers and the Wi-Fi, yet it's chronically disconnecting us. So then we're going to the float tank to disconnect, to reconnect on a deeper level. And it's just incredible what we can cultivate and create in that space where the nervous system relaxes deeply and everything's getting back into its optimum frequency. We can be so much more intelligent and creative. And then when we get out of it and integrate with life, we're so much more useful and productive with our time. Like when we give ourselves that nice amount of time, that deep immersion into the timeless, the darkness, the womb, then when we go back out into the world, time doesn't feel so thick and rushed and rapid and scary. It's much more like moldable, so to speak. You can really play with it and be much more creative with what we do with our time. That's what I find. It resets, and all this stuff that felt very rushed and restrictive, all of a sudden there's so much more possibility.
Yeah, I think you've said it beautifully, and I think that's where it's at. Going back to that tennis player, Novak Djokovic, it always sits in my mind what he told us. He's like, it just helps his at-home mindfulness practice. So really, from a floating point of view, if you're meditating, you're doing all these mindful yoga, whatever you're doing, that's a lot more present, it just helps give a little bit more intensity to that, the following few days.
So what was, when you had that amazing experience after your first float, and then what did you do? You sat down and wrote the business plan, didn't you? You were just like, okay, I've got to do this. I've got to get this out to the world. Like, can you describe that feeling of feeling your purpose just blossom, and I got to get that down on paper, and I've got to do it. That feeling, like you were in the porn industry, you were just doing it to make money. You were just doing in the way that many of us do, and the way our culture has done for so long. Then there was that awakening, you could call it, where this is what I got to do. Can you go back and like vividly describe what that felt like?
Yeah, something that I don't think I'd felt before. And interesting enough, 2 years before that, I was 30, and I was like, in a book it said purpose. And I went, I wonder what that is. I had no idea what purpose meant. Saw it in a book. I was like, oh. And then I think it was like I was reading another book, and it was like, I forgot what it was, the way we're working isn't working. And basically I was always looking for productivity hacks. How could I be more productive? At that stage, I'd kind of come out of being a completely party animal. And, with the different business ventures I was working, at that time I was in India, had this big marketing outsourcing company where we did services with 400 employees. It was just madness, complete madness, like utter madness, that business. And, I went to India, and India actually helped wake me up a little bit as well. Like it helped chip away at me in letting things go. So I'm kind of digressing back a little bit, but that was another business with no purpose. The porn industry, no purpose. Having that float and then just going, I feel great. Why do not many people know about this? Like at that time, it was in the States, in anywhere, it was completely obscure. So at that point, just feeling that, it's like, this is something that needs to be out there. This is something that can help people. This is a cool business, and then looking at the plan and just going, let's try and make this happen. And then, just that feeling of I don't think I'd ever had that feeling where I was hungover in a hotel room and actually just feeling, the urge of this needs to happen. It doesn't matter what's and I don't think I've ever had that with another business. It's just things just kind of fell in play and just it worked out that way. But yeah, just this vibration or just this feeling of just this needs to happen. Doesn't matter what's going on. I sat there all evening, didn't move off this table, like all day, all evening, and just writing. And I think that was it. That's all I needed for the plan to open up, 5 years later. And then, that, and then just every day after that, it was like, this needs to happen. And I just was like, okay, at the time, I think I came back and I blew all my money with this India thing because it just went so big, but then so chaotically crashed because we kept taking on all these different services. So I came back to Australia. It was like, oh, okay. Well, I was in Switzerland and then between Switzerland and India. And that blew up and I pretty much walked from that. I was like, I want my life back. I'll walk from nothing. I'll let it crumble. I'll let all the employees take it. All wonderful people, different culture, the way they do things. So I let them kind of eat it up from the inside out, and they've all got businesses to this day. I created that many consultants out of all the staff there. So, from that point of view, India broke me down, broke that hard edge of just like, it needs to be done now, things need to get done now, the impatience, and it helped with that massively. And it helped me with my aggressive nature. So much so a lot of my friends, when I came back to Perth, it was like, oh, you're different. Oh, am I? Don't feel different. And it was like, because I'm not aggressive. I'm not trying to hit people or this or that after a few drinks and things like that. So that helped from that point of view, big time. And then, but came back with no money. So I had the sports cars to catch the bus. So, and then I shaved my head. And like all this, and then I lost 15 kilos. So I wasn't this big dude, presentable dude that identified with just looking the part of just the picture perfect kind of playboy business dude. And then catching the bus and just seeing people that saw me where I was completely skinny, just looked like I was extremely unwell with bald head. Shaved head, and then just getting onto a bus and just remember seeing a few people going, "Hey Nick, is that you, Nick? Yeah. Hey, how you going?" Getting on the bus, didn't think anything. I was just in my mode of just like, how do I get myself out of this, and then we'll build this float tank center. And for me, then just the obvious thing for me was business consulting. Everyone knew my story in Perth, so it wasn't that hard for me to get work because they knew what I did. So just went around and just did business consulting for a few years as I built up the bank again, and then that was just every day. It's like, I've got to get more clients, so then get this in, so then I can then earn this more money, so then I can get back to this float. So it was just like a big 5-year kind of long escapade. And then when I saw someone sent me a Joe Rogan video about him talking about float tanks, I was like, whoa, this guy, I don't even know who he was. And he was like, some UFC guy. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Look at the millions of views. Like, okay, now it's time. There's actually someone talking about it. I thought it was like one of the few people in the world that knew about it at that time. And then just seeing that, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm just moving forward. I didn't have the money at that time, but I just moved forward. Got my brother, said, dude, sell your house. And then, that was that, sold his house. And, we're doing this. Try to get my parents involved. They wanted no part, probably because they saw what just happened to me. And they're just like, well, you're just too much chaos around you. So then we're like, all right, we're doing this and it'll work out. We're probably 200 grand short or 150 grand short or something of what we need. But, we'll just keep going down this line and just things, just money came and then it just happened. And I think when you jump off that cliff edge, it's almost in the same way I need to be doing this again and just letting go and just jump off that cliff. And like, hey, if you fall, but, something else will present itself. But jumping off is just, the parachute opened and just we're able to, glide down to where we wanted to do to open up, and just things kind of flowed when I look at it back then because it was meant to be. Mm-hmm. And it was this calling, and going back to that feeling of that purpose, it was just, this needs to be birthed. If it's not me, it's someone else, but the call, it's asking me to birth it. So Beyond Rest, the float center that is what we started, that someone else was going to do Beyond Rest. Just happened to be me. And yes, we're in a position now where we kind of lead the way in a way in the industry. And not that I care about that. I don't care at all about that. But I just know that we always need to be the innovators.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we did, the model that we did, now everyone else is doing, it's like that's just not enough. It's just a bucket list thing.
Mm-hmm.
Marketed that way, and it's like, how's the experience? Yeah, it's cool. I tried it. Yeah, you're cool. You did it. You're a floater. Oh, you're a floater. But what transformation have you had? Just trying a couple of floats isn't really going to have that transformation. And going back to the purpose of floating, of helping people trampoline up to being an aspirant, and that's really where it is. We need to evolve and grow and help and guide people through, have the best possible experience. And letting go of this, oh, no, it's cool, just let them do whatever. No. Just like any other guru or teacher, we need to be that within
I think
our
that's
industry.
smart. I think that's really smart. I mean, you guys have been exploring it and deepening it, and you're really smart about it. So I think you're in a position to guide or get people that are really masterful with guided meditation and mindfulness to assist that. And that'll totally take it to another level. Help people navigate the mind and really, become masterful with taking their mind straight to that I amness, straight to who they truly are. Even if there's mind chatter, they can cut straight to the chase. And when there's certain methods and guides put in place, people can really become skillful, especially in the float tank context. It seems to kind of speed up these processes. It seems to speed up the creative process, the learning of a new skill. That's what I've definitely found. Meditation does that as well, going beyond our conditioned mind in which things require a certain amount of willpower and hard work, which is valid. We need to do that, just like you've needed to do that to create your float centers. But there's also been the flow and letting it go, that kind of balance between you wrote it down, it was inspired vision, and you worked hard and you kept coming back to that vision. It seems like a balance between the kind of more cosmic planting of the seed of that vision. It's an inspired vision. Just got to make this happen. And then I find having that inspired vision, thinking about it, working hard on it, but then floating kind of taps us into a deeper potential, a more creative potential that can speed up the process with those visions, with those goals, with those tasks that willpower alone just isn't really good at, I find. So I think that's an awesome way to just become even more sophisticated with this float thing of guiding people into that and reassuring newbies at it, reassuring them of the potential experiences. And I think that's great. I also think it's really cool to just be left to one's own devices and just have their own experience. I think that's cool, but maybe as a side option or something like that. Do you want some extra assistance, or I don't know. Just ideas that are coming through, and hearing you talk about it sounds awesome. Take it to another level.
Yeah, well, that's really where we're at and where we're playing with it. And since we've been doing it with some masterful people that are very present individuals, where they're not really tied to their personal personality at all yet. I'm yet to see any quirks. Everyone has their quirks. But at least like yourself. We got a couple of younger Stews, maybe a 5 years before Stu. Guiding people through and just helping them. Simple, just count your breaths. And it's amazing what that does. Even I've gone back and I've started doing it myself, and I'm like, I don't know how many floats I've done over a long time. No idea. And just doing that, just doing the basic, I go, let's go back as a beginner and just do this and just even that, it's
something I still do as well. Counting the breath. I mean, it can be revisited again and again, no matter how diverse one's practices get. Just counting the breath, drawing out the duration of the breath and counting it as it happens. It's so simple, yet it can be as deep as anything. And then that gap at the top of the in-breath that is often rushed. Like most people don't tap into that ever, like a full complete breath, and then holding the breath in, kind of similar to some of the Wim Hof techniques of holding the breath in, paying attention to that feeling of fulfillment, of being oxygenated, of fullness, paying attention to that, and then like to release into the float tank or release into the mat, whatever the feeling. But to do that in the float tank is so beautiful. Like it's like taking off into nothingness, into everythingness by holding the breath in. And then that release into the water. There's nothing quite like it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I always remember your first float, actually, when you came in with us many years ago, and just seeing how you were. I think even maybe a float that you had early this year when I saw you, or last year. And yeah, just seeing, and I've always like seen you as a guide in that way. I always think of you actually when I think of this practice, and when doing work with you back in the day, in terms of, because this guy, Darren, who's came into our business, who just felt a calling, he was at home. He goes, I need to go to Beyond Rest. He goes, no, I don't need to go to Beyond Rest. I floated there 5 years ago. I don't care about floating. I've got my own mindfulness practice. This guy lived in silence. He was in monasteries, all that kind of jazz for, periods of time. We used to be running a branding agency, quit all that, made money with Bitcoin, crypto things, and, and he's just, I don't need to go to Beyond Rest. And he just kept getting that calling, and then he just walked in and just said, yeah, I need to be here. I don't know what it is. And then eventually kind of worked out and observed and just said, no one's transforming, not no one, but, the vast majority of people, it's just a thing to do. Tick the bucket list. It's a nice little relaxation, like a massage, you just go for a massage. Oh, that's nice. And then, I'm a little bit relaxed for the afternoon, and then that's that. And that's the intention that people were going in with it. So, he kind of brought in this breath. And as you get to the top and then to the bottom, it so reminded me of like what you used to teach, or still do, and in terms of having that juicy in-breath, and then just hold it, and then out, then hold it, and then that holding is the magic, and then counting from there. So I'm always reminded of how you were coming out of the float tanks, to like, how do we get people looking like Stuart walking out of a float tank? Because interesting enough, there's a lot of yogis and meditation type people that we've had come in where you can see that didn't like it.
Oh, okay.
Interesting enough, so there's some things like, but with you and, some other really experienced, really well, grounded, people, all around people in this industry, you can see that, for them it's just, blissful like yourself, and you take in that practice and you take it to another level.
I wonder if because there a big part of the popularization of yoga is like probably the more predominant yoga class experience is the complete opposite to a float tank, in which, some studios have the bright lights on, music the whole time, and sometimes like pumping music. And then often people leave during Shavasana, before Shavasana, so they don't even lie down. And that's a pretty common experience. And I've been quite shocked a few times that was the experience. So I can totally see if that has been one's only yoga experience, which is really just stimulating. Like you can feel good off it, for sure. It can be really good for people, but similar to like an exercise class, like a Les Mills kind of body pump or cycle class, very good for people. But yeah, if that's been their primary yoga experience and then they go to a float tank and it's nothing, literally nothing, that can be a shock. Like, okay, I'm skillful at yoga, or what I think yoga is, and then, okay, this should be a breeze. And I can see that being really challenging and, I mean, totally necessary. We need it. If we're constantly stimulated, I mean, we keep returning back to that fight or flight, sympathetic overload of stress, but I think most of us are addicted to that. And then when we finally release, at first, we perceive it as a shit experience. I see that all the time, like people that are really wound up, always doing, always thinking, and then finally they stop. Often at first, there's a kind of exacerbation of their anxiety. Like everything's magnified, everything's brought to the surface. And that's not pleasant. But then if you lay with it, if you sit with it, if you be with it, it's bliss. Because we are bliss, but not in that tense state. So it's very interesting why it can be unenjoyable for people. Like it's unenjoyable to the inner addict, the inner addict that is addicted to stress, addicted to cortisol, addicted to the melodrama. And then why the fuck would I pay this money for an hour and a half of my time, getting ready, getting showered, like to do nothing? But I think the value of it is just going to be magnified more and more as again, the technology and the population and the pollution continues to go the way it's going. I think it'll be magnified, the importance of doing nothing, which is what floating essentially is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting you say, so we're playing with some technology at the moment in terms of putting it in the tank to actually observe how still people are and actually go, because we're in the game is stillness. So flotation, we're selling stillness. Uber sells time.
Right.
That's really where we are as a comparison. And looking at that is how do we quantify stillness? How do we measure you so you can walk out? Because I don't know if this is an accurate stat, but 80% of people, have no ability to feel or are unaware of what they just did or how they feel after doing something. So actually just showing, okay, this is how still you are. There's all these little Fitbits and Garmins and all these things where I'm measuring my stress right now because I'm active and had a wonderful little matcha and whatever that drink is there before, so I'm probably up a little bit, which is cool.
Well, I'll just interrupt you.
Not that bad.
The thing with these green teas is they have in it a amino acid called L-theanine, so it's way different to like a caffeinated beverage such as coffee or even black tea. The matcha and the sencha, if it's good matcha and sencha, which this is, it has in it, L-theanine, which takes off that typical edge that coffee has. So I just interrupted you to...
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's actually soothing for your adrenals rather than taxing on your adrenals.
Yeah, really good to know, because I was just thinking, I was like, I've got to try this actually when I want to get stuff done, but then I've been so deprived of any stimulants for such a long period.
Yeah, these teas were used by Zen monks to allow them to stay up all night and meditate, so that they would drink it as a ceremony to be able to stay up as long as they wanted to meditate, yet were able to go to sleep when they wanted as well. So I find, if I'm wanting to do a whole lot of writing or work of a nighttime, I'll have matcha often and then I can go to sleep, no problem. Yet coffee, nah. Even black tea, nah. I'm edgy and wired. It just feels completely different. Yeah. Like, where were you? I interrupted you on that.
No, that's fine. I have no idea. Oh, yeah, so we're measuring stillness.
Oh, cool.
So we'll get to a point where we can, show someone this is how still you are. And this is how, you should be still. Or this is someone that's probably a little bit more advanced and these are their metrics. Here's an average of the regular type kind of person that's able to get still, and here's where you are. Especially when someone comes out and they're like, oh, how'd you go with the counting? Oh, yeah, I got to 40. I'm like, did you?
Right.
Really?
Could you do that on your watch as well? Like I've got a smartwatch as well. It probably wouldn't like that much salt for an hour and a half.
No. So it can, obviously these Garmins, I've been testing a lot of them. There's another one called Well-Be, which is really interesting, made out of cork. And very mindful people behind that one. And it actually lets you know when you're going to a certain appointment or where you are via GPS to determine how stressed you should be in certain locations.
Cool.
So if you're a little bit more stressed in, let's say, at home, and then you should normally go, hang on, something's wrong here, go and breathe, go and do something because this is out of normal. Or when you deal with Bob, your stress levels go up, or Dave, or whatever it may be, and, be aware. So as you're going into that appointment, so that's really smart, the technology that's coming out. We're not there yet. And I was reading a book on sports recovery and athletic recovery because they mentioned float tanks, actually. They went in to debunk everything in the sports recovery, like cryotherapy, cupping, all these things. She went in to debunk floating and didn't. And actually had huge write-ups because she connected with people that from the Navy SEALs to all sorts of different people that use it and actually have their own internal test to see how good it is from a performance and recovery point of view because of the stress aspect. But they went into that book, they went into trackers, and they're saying we're not there yet, with these things. So they're a little bit funny. But I can see on the Garmin one here specifically, like when I jump into the tank, I can see I'm calmer. When I do a morning yoga practice, doing a few of Stu's special moves still, in the morning I can see that drop. If I went and did the gym, pump it up, and then your stress stays up, then, coming down, doing some movements, then laying Shavasana and just getting the box breathing, just getting yourself back. And then calming yourself down, it picks it up. So the Garmin's not too bad from that point of view. But in the years to come, it's going to be fantastic for anyone, any yogi, meditator, anyone that does good work to actually really calm someone down, calm that nervous system, and their little, the little app will just say, hey, you've just left Stu's session there, well done. This is amazing. This is, de-stress as you've been or the lowest stress levels you've had for quite a while. Keep doing it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I think that feedback is great. We love feedback. To have that constant feedback, I think it'll be great reminders for people because it's so easy to just not be connected, not even feel the heartbeat, let alone our blood pressure or our heart rate. So to be connected with that is incredible. Have you seen, are you up with Ken Wilber, his work at all? Not too much. He's got a video in which, it's pretty old now actually, but he's a really masterful educator, but just a meditator as well. And he's hooked up to this brainwave machine that's measuring his brain waves. And he's showing how he can control his brain waves upon demand. So according to science, what he was doing is technically impossible. So he would go from waking state to dream state to deep meditation to nothing. And it would pretty much show up what would be the case if someone was dead. Wow. Yet here he is, eyes open. And it's a really deep delta frequency. Deep delta, deep samadhi, but like from full engaged. What's beta? Yeah. So beta into beta, alpha, theta, delta. Right. Yeah. And then gamma. Could be. So it shows it in real time going and just shifting in like a second. It's really cool. I'll forward you the video and I'll leave links down below of the podcast to that video because it's quite shocking, it's impressive, but shocking, like how we do actually have control over our nervous system. And Wim Hof is also educating people on that. We have control over our nervous system. We have control over our mind, over our heart rate. We actually do. But most of us just haven't paid any attention to it. We've got this vehicle, this mind, this body, yet we've bought into this whole illusion that we're not in control of it and that just learn and do and learn and do and learn and do. And before we know it, we're out of control of it. So all these things seem to be pointing us back into having autonomy again over this incredible mind and body, which I'm excited about. Yeah, it's going to be great for anyone in the industry doing good that's helping people, reset their nervous system or calm it down to some degree. And as everyone comes connected and these apps become smarter at being a lot more accurate, really, and then notifying people that, it's okay. And they'll be the good notifications, not the Instagram or the Facebook notifications that, or I don't know, does people still use Facebook? I'm not sure, but I think it's there. I think some people do. I hop on it every now and then. We messaged each other. I use the Messenger, sorry. But I don't think I've logged on to Facebook. No, I don't think it's the hip thing to do anymore, is it? On the Facebook sides of things, so no. But interesting enough, just a side chat on social media. One of my other passions actually is
decentralized distributed technology.
I keep hearing about that. Please talk some more about it.
So probably a good example is uTorrent. So back in the day when we used to torrent, and everyone did it, torrented down movies or music, and that technology worked in actually, Napster was there. They got taken down because they were centralized. They could easily be taken down when you could download, your music. And then uTorrent came out in a way that just allowed people to share bits and pieces of this file across, the internet. Right. So there's no one particular person. They tried to take down the individual site that listed the torrents, but the people actually sharing and downloading was just distributed across, the planet. So then that idea then formed into Bitcoin, blockchain. And so people see it as a currency, and it's an amazing currency. And what it will do, it'll be the future currency of maybe it won't be the future currency, maybe it'll be something else, but something similar, either Bitcoin or something similar, will be a store of value that people will be using in the future, just because of a third of the population in the world is unbanked. They have no identity. And, the ability that this could do for them to then allow them to vote and, get land titles and get properties and all these things that they can't do in the third world. So it's just massive. And as, countries collapse and their financial systems, are destroyed, just like after the Second World War, you've got in Germany where people are pushing barrels of cash down the road after. There's famous pictures of people walking down the road with this barrels of cash because their money is worth nothing. So but as you see in your country, because it's coming when it is, that there's going to be this financial reset. However way it turns out, who knows? And when it happens either way, there's going to be, some interesting times ahead financially for people to go, hang on, I'm best pulling my money out of fiat, currency. Fiat is basically like the Australian dollar, US dollar, created out of nothing. Really, it's just printed out of nothing. Back in the day, money used to be printed backed by gold. So there was an asset backed to that money. So really, that had some value. Right now, our money is essentially worthless, really. There is value at the moment, but the tap could be turned off just like that and it's worth nothing. Yeah. So you have all this money in the bank and it's like, well, that's worth nothing now. So sorry about that. It's all a bit of an illusion, that. Yeah. And so that's the currency sides of things, and, that's great. But the technology behind it is even more fascinating, going back to uTorrent and Bitcoin, and this blockchain technology that allows, peer-to-peer transactions where you don't have to go through a bank. There's no central intermediary to send money. I send money to you through my Commonwealth Bank to your ANZ or whatever it may be. If they want to stop it or get in the middle or just take it, they can, if one day you can't log into your bank account, it's like, sorry, it's frozen. We don't like the type of person you are, so it's gone. Yeah. We don't like the way you live and what you believe. So,
well, the banks don't even have the money either.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother thing. We just take it for granted that they do, but it gets revealed that, no, they don't even have the money.
Exactly. So, so that's the money sides of things. And then the distributed technology behind it is where the magic is, really. Currency is cool. It's going to be awesome, allow people to transact. But the technology behind is just allowing people to create this new internet. So when the internet was created way back when, Tim Berners-Lee and a lot of these people just had this dream for this just free society, getting away from that 1984, whatever the guy, George Orwellian kind of, world where we're kind of controlled. But really what happened is that when we went from the traditional corporates and the ties screwing people over, and whenever anyone does any surveys with the corporates, it's, you ask anyone, do you trust corporates or, the government? The majority is no. And so really we went to these now tech companies and everyone's like, create an app, and this whole rage of just Facebook and Google and Amazon and all these, they're as evil as can be now in terms of where they're at. And it's really just gone from the suit to the hoodie. Same principles behind it, because ultimately there's VCs that put money into these companies. The second, you could have a vision like Google, great vision, do no evil. VCs put money behind it. Sorry about the do not evil. Let's just rip that philosophy and mission off the paper because we need to make some money. So all your good intentions and purpose is gone. So if anyone's ever doing something cool, And there's VCs and the attractiveness of actually, hey, I can get cash and I can stop freaking couch surfing. It's hugely enticing, but you're going to lose your dream. And it's going to go into a centralized formula where it's then going to go into the market, and then all bad thing happens, from the shareholders. You've got to get profits every quarter and meet the shareholder demands. So that's kind of where society really is in terms of, you look at the bad in the world, it's all got to do with this quarter. Each quarter you've got to get more profits. Okay, let's go and build another mine that'll wreck the Great Barrier Reef or whatever it may be, or this beautiful land in Tasmania. So it all comes from centralized companies that need to listen to shareholders. Now, when you get to the distributed technology, it will not have a central it will not be governed by any particular one person. So let's say the new Facebook, good example. There's a company called Junto.Foundation, good one to look up. It's a new type of social media built on authenticity. No vanity metrics, no followers, no likes. So Junto, Junto. And they're doing a Kickstarter thing, really cool people to get behind. I think they've raised 100,000 now, in the last few weeks. And they're basically built on this technology called Holochain, which is it's different to blockchain. So I won't go into blockchain and non-blockchains, but basically it's distributed technology that takes the central party out of the way, that allows peer-to-peer people to interact. So then, the new Uber, so you could basically get on there, and rather than Uber taking 25% of the poor driver's wage, he gets 100% of it. So you just go through this new technology. Or Airbnb, they're not taking that huge cut in between, and it becomes fair B&B, and everyone.
And that works, huh?
That's not working yet,
right?
Because the blockchain doesn't work for that. So the idea behind blockchain was like, we're going to do this, and you probably heard this huge cryptocurrency rage, a year and a half ago, and the reason why it did blow up, and it was like the .com boom back in the late 90s, is that nothing really worked that well. So, and then now there's new technology. I love this one, Holochain, because their vision is just insane. It's so deeply spiritual, enlightening. Holochain, absolutely amazing. They've got a thing called Scepter, CEPTR is another, it's the higher version of it, and it's all about it's all about changing the planet, getting currencies created and currencies, they see, they don't see it as a currency, they see it as a currency, like a flow, and they use biomimicry. So all their technology is based off nature. So they use the uTorrent, going back to the uTorrent, they're using that with biomimicry, matching the way that the laws of nature and the way things work from a technology point of view. Because when you look at consciousness, it's all 1010. It's all the same as code. And then when you map biomimicry with code, like I'm just getting tingly all over just thinking about it, like in terms of what's there. And you look at predominantly the biggest issue in the world of why we're messing up the planet, and we have no chance of probably meeting our climate change in 2030, which is quite scary. But at the same time, something needs to be disrupted quick and hard, and sustainability, as bad as it sounds, isn't going to cut it. That kind of is gone. It's cool to be you've got to be sustainable. It's great for the planet. It's respect, but it's not going to help, get to where we need to be. And trying to think, is it Red Grid? I've got a mental blank. But anyways, there's a company in Melbourne building on Holochain that are all about disrupting, completely offering free energy. And they're doing it on this distributed platform so that there's no way that these big evil central corporate companies can get in the way of stopping it. And that's their goal, to basically just get free energy everywhere and getting around, the massive vision. They're saying this is the only way to do it, and that's built on this technology.
So how can the big companies not get them? How can they get away with that, with the big companies not just going over and killing them? Which is what has happened before. Yeah,
exactly. Well, basically, once you kind of create this spawn of this open source technology that's out there, it's like the way they could kill it is they would go to Amazon, which hosts, or Google, they host the majority of the internet. Through Holochain, they've got kind of like an Uber situation where everyone has their computers across the globe, hosting this new internet, distributed internet, And then you've got these platforms on top, which are then distributed on top of distributed.
I guess I don't fully know what decentralized actually is.
Yeah, so I guess the way to look at it is a good analogy is, I'm trying to think of a simple nature one is you've got the spider. So you have a spider across here, and if we were bad people, we wanted to kill it, we just get the middle of it, and then it's dead. You have a starfish kind of on the table. We cut off one of its legs, it just grows another one. You cut it in half, it then grows back. That's, in a way, a good example of that kind of decentralized to nature sides of things.
A jellyfish could be another good analogy.
I guess so.
There's some immortal jellyfish that no matter what you do, even if you like squash the shit out of it and like you think it's done, it'll regrow. They're quite incredible. The immortal jellyfish.
The immortal jellyfish or mushrooms and these kind of things as well. Like, so long story short, when you don't have a central authority, you're not there trying to take profit and everything's from a non-profit point of view. And, from a currency point of view, all these things, like if you invested in Holochain, I'm not your financial advisor, but it's a bloody good investment, and it's a cool thing to be involved in. And then and the thing about these cryptos and these blockchains, the more and more you look into them, the more and more dodgy they get. Then when you look at like something like a Holochain, and there's a couple of others where they're just, the vision is so like the planet's wrecked. This is the way to do it. We're going to get involved and change all these currencies, these flows, and then take these central parties out of the way, and let's build a new Facebook like a Junto or the Red Grid. Let's disrupt the energy system to, and this thing's only been around 8 months, and these communities are just growing and growing. I've been to a couple of these meetups, and it's just amazing, just the vibe of just like they don't talk about money, they don't talk about any of that kind of thing with their currency going up. And then when we talk about that currency, it's that most fiat money is backed by nothing. A lot of these things can back by computing power, or there's one with organic produce. So your currency is backed by the seeds. Like that's a pretty natural thing to back a currency by, or water, or all these kind of things.
Right.
So there's some really interesting things that are popping up through, these currencies that actually have something of value. Like your iPhone, there's something of value. There's computing power in that. Your laptop, that has value.
So it's kind of like full circle, almost coming back to basics, but not evolving. We're evolving and taking everything to another level. But it sounds like almost coming full circle back to more of a tangible yet untangible, paradoxical kind of. Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's just really cool. If you're into activism, or you're into just wanting things to be better for the environment and the planet, it's like looking, if you're technologically inclined at all or interested, you look into Holochain, you look into their vision, look into what they're trying to do with their technology to actually remove the middleman. And whenever you have a middleman in history, there's problems. There's always problems because they need to make money, and it gets in the way and it ruins pretty much everything. So at the moment, it's just this technology coming out to disrupt the internet, disrupt everything about it. The richest companies in the world, Amazon, Google, Yahoo, Google, Amazon, Facebook, the
Twitter's up there as
the
well.
Twitters, but these kind of companies that are up there that are technological giants that still follow the same formula that's always been around in the capitalist society. And capitalism, conscious capitalism is great, I think you recommended a book way back, on that one from those guys, the cafe dudes
Cafe
in LA.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. So very similar to that.
Right.
So they're aligned to that principle, and biomimicry, and just matching everything within nature. So long story short, technology is coming that's going to be matching patterns of nature that'll be there to disrupt the central authorities that are here at the moment, these central companies that are causing problems to the planet. So I'm very much aligned. My two passions, is float tanks helping people wake up, and holochain technology to disrupt and make the world a better place.
Flowing against the system. I still am a big fan of Rage Against the Machine. And their lyrics just powerful, against the machine, against the kind of norm. This is like flowing against the machine. And I love it. I mean, a lot of people right now are feeling disheartened and helpless, the environment is fucked. And yes, we still, like you said, we want to be conscious of what we are playing a part in terms of sustainability and the environment. But a lot of us are feeling pretty helpless, like we're getting out and being active in certain ways, and then that doesn't do shit. They still bulldoze that huge piece of land, and the Amazon is still getting just wiped out more and more every day. It's happening at such a rapid pace that it's so disheartening and heartbreaking. And I think it's paralyzing a lot of people. People are feeling like it's happening. Fuck, like, what do I do? And then there are some people that are really active and getting angry and really kicking up a storm. Even that doesn't seem to be doing much. And we should be active as we can. At the same time, entertain these seemingly more subtle but effective measures as well, creating this new possibility, this new harmony, and taking the power back, taking the power back. It seems like this is the underlying message of empowering people, through flowing and floating and reconnecting to who they truly are, finding their purpose, their clarity, and then getting curious of these new possibilities like what you're talking about. Because things are changing. And if we can each expand our mind and find more clarity and directionality and not just be sheeps to the old way, the machine, that's going to have a tipping point eventually. And it doesn't take a lot for that tipping point to happen. Like, it doesn't mean every single person in the world needs to wake up and the huge CEOs of the huge corporations that are possibly just not doing good things to the earth and so forth. It doesn't mean we need to wait for them to wake up, but there's a tipping point as each of us makes more conscious choices and invests our money into things that are doing great things in the world. That tipping point will happen, but we need to each play our part, I guess, be conscious of where we are putting our money and where we are putting our energy as well. Because I think that's becoming a currency as well. I'm hearing a lot of talk on this whole rating system, system that's prevalent in the internet in terms of rating something, rating a podcast, rating liking a Instagram photo, rating a business. Apparently, I mean, this could just be total hypothetical talk, but this ratings system will gradually take on a main form of currency in which this whole like and dislike, we're going to build up a currency of ratings, which I don't quite get yet, but it kind of makes sense. The amount of time we put into social media and the phone and all that. I mean, I hope it evolves into something good. I mean, right now it's killing people, literally. People are getting more depressed than ever. People are feeling more disconnected to ever. People are getting bullied more than ever in the cyber world, apparently. And I do hope it's kind of training, so to speak, for something else.
Well, it definitely is. Like, if it's not Junto, it's someone else, but it's happened. The new authentic social media platforms are coming. And Junto did an experiment in a university. I can't remember which one, but in that university, quite a few people were using the app, right? Just like Facebook started in Harvard, as probably a lot of people have seen in the movie, etc., to know the story. And so the same thing happened in that university to use it. And a lot of people came off feeling empowered. They used it as a daily diary, just putting up their message of what they feel and what's going on for that particular day. And, rather than actually knowing, you have no idea who sees it, what's going on, no likes, no followers, nothing like that. So you're not going back to check that notification, that red thing of just, do I get any likes? Am I okay? In the world, and everyone gets sucked into it. We all do. I get sucked into it, from a business point of view. I don't really use it personally that much. But, like that vanity metric, taking that away, and then what that does for, for people's mental health. So Junto is really interesting, group to follow. And if you're into, wanting to change the way people, interact with social media, supporting those guys is a really good start. If you got a few dollars and you want to send their way, they're doing some cool things. And just speaking about mental health, just to scare the living jabebas out of a few people, that at the moment technology's there. When you talk about AI, we're ready to replace the human workforce. So it's there. It's there ready to happen. But right now, a lot of the powers that be are not bringing into play just yet. Like Marianne Williamson in the US, she's pushing this whole universal basic income, that jobs are going to go and we're going to get this income to replace, your current income. So then you just don't sit back and do work. But as we know, if people do nothing, they're going to go crazy. So a lot of people are holding back from this technology of coming to replace, to really replace the human workforce. And if they do that, we'll be in chaos. We talk about the police having problems. I have, in society, it could go mad, with everyone, not having to do anything. So more than ever, if you're in the industry, to help people through yoga, through through meditation, whatever it may be, you have a particular tool that can help people, reclaim their mental health and their mental well-being. That's really where it's at. It's like, how do we help people go from, working their whole life and conditioned to doing from the age of 5 to, upwards, that you got to do and, achieve and do something. If you don't do anything, you're a failure. And people and then all of a sudden technology replaces the workforce. And we are literally at that point. But it's not happening yet because of the, people just going, it's going to be chaos, with the human workforce, going mad, that human workforce, just human beings sitting at home going crazy, and what impact the butterfly effect that will have. So really where we're at is just know that it's happening, it's coming. Marilyn Williamson's trying to push it. They're pushing this whole universal basic income in the upcoming election in the US. Not that I follow a lot of that, just people send me things that I'm interested in, that when someone hears me rant about this stuff. And so I kind of get checked in that, okay, people are definitely talking about it around the globe, that UBI. And with that, that's great. And that's cool for everyone, and not having to have that stress of keeping up. But there's bigger problems down there. So for anyone that's that's got the capabilities like yourself, Stuart, or anyone else, that this is where the work begins of how do you help people get there. And, you'll be in demand when this happens, for sure, that because there's going to be a lot of people, not in a good state, and, there'll be some chaos and madness around it. So with something so cool, when everyone goes, oh my God, everyone just gets a universal basic income, socialist, it's brilliant. But it's not happening yet because of those huge concerns.
Yeah, people need to feel valued and a sense of purpose. For so long, we've gotten our hands dirty, whether that's literally or figuratively. We need to do, no matter how well we get accustomed to just being and floating, meditating and being, unless we do choose the renunciate path of being a monk in a cave, not really needing to do anything. Their purpose is, I'm going to just be. Most of us need to do something or we go mad. We need some kind of job or some kind of sense of purpose. So it is going to be interesting times, as the whole way we've been working for so long changes, and it just seems so important to not only reconnect to one's true self via floating, yoga, whatever, like we keep talking about, but also getting out in nature and re-grounding. It's just so important, so basic. But as we get more and more into this technological advancement, or whatever we want to call it, like simplifying, getting on the earth. It's so simple, yet so many people actually just don't do it. Going from a high-rise building to a high-rise apartment, many, many, many people in the world are literally not getting their feet on the earth in like a given week, a given month. And that, I think that's going to drive people mad as well. These combinations of the changing of currency and maybe not having a job anymore, not having anything to do, and not getting on the earth. I mean, talk about mental disease right there. So the simple things, nutrition, floating, meditating, letting go, reconnecting to the earth, it's just totally necessary as things continue to change. It seems for those of us that can, we need to keep coming back to the simple truths. And I think that'll really assist us as all the fluctuating phenomena changes, as it always does. We're just reaching this kind of rapid growth, rapid change that's going quicker than any of us can even comprehend, getting in touch with what's not changing, which is the nothingness. That's the flow state. That's the floating state. That's the meditation state. It's so important. Otherwise, we are all going to go mad as things change so quickly. And the AI thing, I mean, I think it's going to confuse and frustrate and send so many more people mad and depressed. So that vital remembering to connect to who we truly are and what's ultimately real. I mean, it's going to get trickier as these what does Elon Musk speak of? This bandwidth connection, this kind of so right now the internet and like our phone, for example, it's external to us,
right?
But there's a new technology emerging very quickly it's pretty much an implant that'll get us on the same bandwidth as the internet, as the phone. And I mean, that's going to, when people decide to log on to that and not have the phone like external to them and they can choose when to turn it off. And I mean, as we build up to those technologies, which seem inevitable and undeniable, they're already in the works to build up that autonomy, that discernment, that grounding, that reconnecting, which I thank you for being one of the platforms in the world, an avenue for people to reconnect and quieten and people that normally wouldn't, athletes and business people. And it's a major avenue for that. Not everyone is going to walk into a yoga room. That's for sure. I know people that just wouldn't, but they would go to a float tank and reconnect. So it's such a valuable platform, and I'm so glad you've brought it into the world, into Perth, and these other inspirations that you're on fire with as well. So I want to do another podcast with you in the near future when you're back in town. Let's keep the conversation going. I think it's time to wrap it up.
Cool, man.
But I mean, we could just keep talking, I think, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been great to hang out.
It's been amazing. Awesome podcast. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any other side notes you want to finish up with where people can connect with you?
I could go down another train, but I'm not going to go down there because just due to time, and we'll do it another day.
Okay.
But essentially Beyond Rest. If you're in Melbourne or Perth or Brisbane, that's where we are. And if you're looking to just disconnect from technology just for an hour, and then see what happens, we're there to help facilitate you through that. But that's really where you'll find me at the moment, before something else interesting happens down the line. So
wonderful, Nick. Love your work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, man.
All right.